Welcome to the Fieldnotes Podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
What do people need to know about why they get Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, and how to get out ahead of that and not suffer so much and have a better outcome and simply do better with this really prevalent issue? Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by a nurse and a thought leader in this domain, Esther Yunkin. Thanks so much for your time, Esther.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So you have a really interesting background, kind of a yin and yang type origin story coming into this, because you were an ER nurse for a long time.
Yes.
Was any of that part of the genesis story of your disenchantment with the conventional approach, or
absolutely. So I've always known that I wanted to be a nurse. A lot of people, they don't know what they want to be when they're little. And I always knew I would be helping people. For a while as a teenage girl, I thought maybe a vet, because I think every teen girl goes through the animal phase. But I always came back to nursing. And when I went to school, I went in with what I now know as like a weird thought of the body as a whole. And when you are a nurse or when you're in healthcare, you have to look at the whole, which is body, mind, and spirit. I remember as a freshman writing a paper on that. And now, with my decades in healthcare, that is not a normal thought. Most people are completely fine with the siloed medicine of just looking at one body system. And so in the ER, I was still approaching people with that whole person perspective. And then you see the same people come back, you see the same things come back, you see the misuse of the ER. And eventually I just got sick and tired of putting Band-Aids on chronic things. And I went back to school for holistic health. I really, really loved saving lives, but that's not what the ER is anymore. We do a little bit of that, but I feel like the ER now is mostly managing a broken healthcare system. And that's not what I went into the ER for.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So interesting. I should note just my personal conviction and experience is that nurses are heroes, and do want to really give you a heartfelt thanks for what you do. And because I'm married to a nurse and my mom's a nurse, then it's just been really eye-opening that the training's very different than physicians. And now we have a nurse practitioner that just joined the practice. And so this sort of, where does the person fit in the milieu of their family, their community, their home? Who are they as a whole? It's such a natural segue into holistic medicine. It's practically a pun, right? It's
right.
Nursing is holistic already. It's more than sort of building out the toolbox for some of the specifics of what you're going to talk with us about today.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And I mean, and doctors are super valuable too. I know a lot of people throw shade on doctors now because like you're kind of like the head, you're the face of the healthcare system. And so if people think the healthcare system is broken, which it is, then doctors get a lot of that blame. But there are some really, really good doctors. I've worked with some bad doctors. I've worked with some bad nurses because, we're all humans. But I mean, I don't think anybody goes into healthcare for the bad reasons. We all originally went there to help people.
Yeah, I should briefly note, I really love and respect my colleagues. For me, I finally had my aha moment. I would say that cognitive dissonance is the reason that physicians just are there in a very awkward position. I would just briefly say, if you run into a concept that's going to radically transform your ability to show up, but it's going to bring down the house of cards of med school and residency and the sense of confidence you have getting out of bed in the morning with an unknown outcome and unknown intact relationships with your peers and your paycheck.
Yes.
It's a pretty intimidating thing. And so there's just such a big reaction hump to get over. And so I just feel really fortunate to be on the other side of that, but I have a ton of compassion, and I just think it's just a tough situation. But I because I went to med school and residency and I'm in medicine, I just know the people who went into it to take care of other folks. They're just sort of their intellectual prisons basically invisible.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good
So
way to put it. Yep.
yeah. Okay, well, on to the good stuff. So so let's just talk about yeah, I'm so fascinated by journalism, right? About not burying the lead, like thinking about the lead.
Right.
And so what do you and you gave me questions to start with, but what do you think's because there's this call to action, people can go and work with you. I think a lot of our audience is either they're gonna be 6 to 1 women to men,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them either have Hashimoto's and they're overwhelmed, or they think they might have it. Maybe we should start with the diagnostic part, because this can be so silent for so many people, and kind of how do you figure it out, and this balancing act being between holistic and conventional, or if you have it and you need to know more. We're going to end today's podcast with some questions you can ask your doctor or medical provider, but yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, I think you're right. People don't know. They wonder. And the statistics are an average woman between suspecting that something is wrong and getting a Hashimoto's diagnosis is 4 years of trying to find that answer. And she visits at least 4 different specialists or practitioners. And that's too many years. It's just too long to be frustrated and not know how to help yourself. And so the first thing is get some labs. And if you can't get your labs from a doctor, then order them yourself. In most of the at least in the US, you can order your own labs. There's a couple states who say that they have more power over your medical knowledge than you do as a patient, but most of the states you can do that. So work with your doctor to figure out if your thyroid is producing enough thyroid hormone. And then from there, we know that about 90% of people who are not producing enough thyroid hormone, it is caused by Hashimoto's. And that is where I see a bigger disconnect in medicine. Doctors will sometimes do the labs and they'll say, oh, you have hypothyroidism. Here's some Synthroid or levothyroxine. Stay on this for the rest of your life. We'll tweak the dose. There's nothing else that you need to do. There's nothing else that we need to check out. Come back for your labs. And that's where that disconnect is, because if somebody doesn't know what's causing their hypothyroid, then they don't have any agency over fixing the root causes, or even digging into finding out that there are root causes. Their doctor's like, yeah, no, you just have it. It's common. Take this med. So I think number one, women and people listening to your podcast already know this. Women need to take agency of their own health. And that's why people listen to your podcast.
Yeah, and yours too. I'm sure it's the kind of neat part of what's happening in this part of the digital ether, and this part of people's agency.
Yeah.
Is they I think they just now know, okay, I have an option. It's going to take some work. I also think there's kind of an intuitive thing that happens for them. They hear it in the person's voice or the information. This, I think I need this. I need to go learn more about this. So yeah, so talk about the root causes and how, what's that information that people would get. And again, in terms of not bearing the lead, yeah, let's just go ahead and let's get there's 10 questions so people can go to the show notes and they can get your 10 questions to ask a doctor. This is actually so great because kind of like a movie or a TV show, right? There's going to be some dramatic tension here depending on how this goes with the 10 questions.
Right?
So people can go to the show notes. They can get your 10 questions to ask. Just share a few. And what's that going to create? What's that going to open up? I have some guesses what the questions are.
Well, so the PDF is free. I mean, in exchange for an email address. And I go through all the questions and why they're important to ask. And then the last page is printable. So you can take that list of 10 questions and you can bring it to your doctor. And so I think the first question that a doctor might like recoil at is the most important question. And it is, why are my thyroid labs off? Why do I have hypothyroid? And at least my perspective of why a doctor might recoil is because they don't exactly know the reason. And there's no quick answer. They can't say A plus B caused C. Therefore, since you have C, we know A and B. Any autoimmune problem is not that simple. And so I don't know. I would love your perspective. Like, what would you say, especially before that cognitive dissonance when you were back, right out of residency? Like, what would you say if somebody asked you that?
It is very poignant for me because I did and said a number of things over the years that were well-intentioned but unhelpful in comparison to when I got my functional medicine training in 2006. Right. And even for me, it was cognitive dissonance. I thought if I had somebody show me then Great Smokies, but now Genova. I had them show me that lab when I was in Kotzebue in 2001. They said, "Hey, I had this gut testing done by this lab in North Carolina. What's this mean?" And I said, it doesn't look like lab testing that I would think of as valid. So at least I had the humility to say, I don't know. Right. At a minimum, I don't know what to do with it. But part of me thought, so I would have said before 2006, we don't know a lot about why this happens. And from 2006 onward, I would have said autoimmunity, stress. We live in a world that's not friendly to thyroid function. The thyroid gland doesn't take a joke very well.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yeah, lots of just, eager to have minutes and days and hours and weeks of, really an endless conversation about. It's sort of it's one of my love now of the thyroid is I think of it as like the trout stream of our ecosystem. It's like the indicator species of the health of us as an ecosystem rather than a machine. So as our thyroid function rises or falls or shines with radiant vitality, thus we rise and fall. That would be maybe my favorite thing I've learned along the way. But,
that's a really good way to put it.
well, question one may be the killing stroke. Actually, I don't know that they're going to get to the other 9.
They can pick and choose what order to do. Like one of the other questions that's a little easier is what is my TSH and what's an ideal range?
Yeah.
Because the TSH, for people who are listening who might not know, it's the most common thyroid medication or lab done, and it's how your brain is asking your thyroid to produce hormone. So I liken it to like when your power goes out, you automatically like flip the light switch just to see if it's working. And sometimes you're frustrated and you hit the switch a whole bunch of times. That's like your TSH. Your brain is keeping hitting the switch to ask for more, to ask for the lights to turn on. And so the higher your TSH, the less your thyroid is working well. So having somebody ask, what's an ideal range is, I feel like, a fairly benign question, because what the lab norms are were created from a sick population. So the higher end of normal is still sick. And so asking your doctor what's an ideal range might give just a more focused answer for one person's health plan.
I love it. It's a litmus test of whether they can show up for the person the way you and I know they need to be shown up for best. Right. And certainly if they seek out an IFM certified practitioner, they're going to, or somebody with IFM training, they're going to get that. And thankfully, maybe in a more sort of good news vein, during my career, I think then we've seen the tipping point where I had a person I really trust, a surgeon, say, hey, Rob, in the lower 48, there's a lot of functional medicine now. There's a lot of things getting solved. Then there's training in holistic medicine. There's a number of different entities besides IFM. very reputable, very science-based. So thankfully, it is the turning of the tide. And a number of folks might hear, oh, well, yeah, there is more that matters, or I do have training in that, or I don't, but I'll get you to somebody who does. That's a great question. So it's kind of perfect, really. Even enthusiasm and humility, I think, would be very good signs in response to those questions.
Yeah. 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 If a doctor, I've worked with some, like, don't question me, just do what I say. And yeah, if they show that versus humility, it tells you so much. And if you talk to any human being who is willing to say, that's a good question, I don't know for sure, but let me point you in the direction or let me find out, that's somebody who you want to work with, whether it's to work with as a friend, to work with as a neighbor, or to work with in your healthcare. Yes.
Yeah. As we keep learning from Esther today, I'll just share one thing that our audience, who I thank for joining us, might be puzzled by. Conventional medicine's binary, so you're diseased or you're not. So the other bifurcation that's just so horrifying to people is they say, I'm symptomatic, I'm overweight, I'm constipated, my hair's falling out, my nails are thin, all the classic hypothyroid stuff. Their TSH is 3.5, and so they're just so angry when they're told that they're fine. And what they're actually being told is you're not diseased based on the medical provider's conception of disease, because unfortunately, conventionally trained NPs and PAs and DOs, all do this. You're fine. And what they mean is, in a binary world, the machine's not broken. You don't have disease. And so it's no wonder they're enraged, because they're overweight, their hair's falling out, their nails are constipated.
Yes.
And so really here, when I offer them the 6-part thyroid panel, that's the holy grail. They just say, I've been trying to get my antibodies tested. I've been trying to get my reverse T3. I've been trying to get my free T3.
Yes. Yeah. I had somebody in California tell me they tried to get their reverse T3 added. And I don't remember if it was the doctor or the insurance, but they said, that's not a lab we do in California. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, you really do have to be tough to show up in this domain. I'm inherently thin-skinned. I'm kind of a super empathic person, like sensitive kid. And so really had to grow some rhino hide for all this stuff. Just so much that gets said, and it's just, right? I want to scream.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
I guess it's what darkly humorous. Once you're farther into it, we can show up for people, and they can just keep going until maybe this is. I'm a little punchy today. It's been quite a week. I think there's these safe harbors. There's these safe harbors in all of this sea of chaos right now. And I think there's lots of safe harbors that are growing.
Yes.
And so I think people need the solace, hey, you've got this. There's a provider who's got this. There's, Esther and folks in these domains who can show up. There's a whole constellation of amazing resources emerging.
Absolutely.
So just use the questions, listen to your heart, listen to your gut, and just get to the folks who say yes, this and yes, and this matters. Here we go.
Yes. Yep.
So what's that look and feel like? Yeah, let's segue into that. What can they look forward to? They've continued on past the questions. They found somebody who's enthusiastic and excited. And then how do they balance holistic and conventional? How's that going to feel?
One thing is looking for root cause, and there's never just one root cause. There's always multiple. And that's, I think, where people get overwhelmed. I know that there's one like thought leader in the holistic Hashimoto space, and the quiz that you can pay for is like, it's hundreds of questions. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, no wonder people are overwhelmed. Like, my goal is to make it as simple as possible, because one of the root causes of autoimmune problems is stress. And so adding more stress by making your health overwhelming is something that I want to take away. I do not want anybody to be overwhelmed. So I advocate for using common sense to figure out your root causes. Testing is amazing. Like, it's vital. But if you already know that, stress is one of your top root causes, well, let's work on that.
Mm-hmm.
How can you lower your stress? Do you need to, put a like, I have Screen Zen on my phone where I limit
Mm-hmm.
my time on social media.
Mm-hmm.
That lowers my stress because
Mm-hmm.
research tells us that scrolling increases our stress. So if you can do simple things and that's not overwhelming. So
Mm-hmm.
that is what I always want the people who are working with me to know, that we can do things simply. Let's look at your root causes, and yes, pursue testing, pursue all the answers, but also let's dig down into what is simple and what is sustainable. What can you do today? And
Mm-hmm.
there's always something. There's
Mm-hmm.
always something you can do
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. That's certainly, I mean, no surprise that I would resonate with that. Family medicine physicians by nature are sort of KISS, keep it simple, superstar type people, just because of the breadth and depth. Again, thinking about being in the ER, being in Kotzebue here north of the Arctic Circle for 2 years, if there aren't ways to simplify these protocols, and I didn't realize at the time, it's super helpful then actually for what is the distillation or the thumbnail sketch of what's happening with these different scenarios and where's the yield.
Yeah.
And I absolutely have observed as well that even though the physiology is complex, when I talk with people about the genesis of Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, I just say sort of stress and autoimmunity are these sort of self-feeding cousins.
Yeah.
So people are in one of these self-feeding downward spirals, and we're trying to create a self-feeding upward spiral. And as you alluded to, when people work with somebody gifted like you, it takes less time than they think. It's simpler than they think. Uh, I think that's where sort of then agency and action come in.
Yes.
Okay, uh, so go ahead and actually limit the screen time, or go ahead and follow through on some whole food, and then talk to Esther, or somebody who's good at what they do. How's it going?
Right.
And
Right. And I
take
think
action.
and I think that's a key difference between doctors and nurses. And that's what I took away from the ER. Like, the doctor can get you answers and give you a plan. Like, you need to do XYZ, whether it's take a medication or what. And then the nurse comes alongside of you and helps you figure out how to put that into action in your life
Mm-hmm.
so that
Mm-hmm.
it fits your season of life, the stressors. And, like right now when we're recording, it's mid-August. I know that everybody's trying to cram in the last bits of summer while
Mm-hmm.
trying to school shop, while trying to prepare for, whatever's coming up in fall, while getting their kids into sports. Like, only each person knows what they're dealing with and what they have bandwidth for. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where a nurse gets to come alongside and say, okay, this is what was recommended. How can you make this work for you right now? And maybe in 3 months, what works for you is a little bit different because
Mm-hmm.
life has changed. And yeah, like you said, having somebody come alongside you and help you figure out how to keep it simple is so key.
And this is how you roll, right? Didn't you? You 4 kids, farm, chickens,
Yep.
homeschooling.
Yep.
So, what are a couple of your superpowers now that you've refined your process? How do you manifest that daily? How would you characterize that now? Is it organization? Is it, admittedly, it's not one thing, but what are some of your aha moments early in your journey compared to now? What's evolved in your process?
I think the biggest thing was realizing I'm surrounded by farms. I'm surrounded by farmers. And so I see them and the work is never done. And yet they have to end each day. And I had to apply that to my life as a mom, as a homeschooler, as a business owner. There's always more to be doing that I could be doing and that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to stop. I have to put boundaries on my time. And that was the biggest aha moment for me. It's like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I have to set limits on my time. And
Mm-hmm.
so now I don't touch my computer 90% of the time after supper. That is
Mm-hmm.
my personal boundary. I'm not going to work on homeschool stuff. I'm not going to work on my business. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to, like, I'll reach out to clients, if they text me or something, I will reply up until a little bit later. But that is one of my boundaries, because prior to that, I was just pursuing the work that is never finished, and that is
Mm-hmm.
not healthy. So that is one of the biggest things that I have implemented.
Mm-hmm. So cool. So useful. Yeah. My household, my kids tease me that dad's not good for much after 8:30. And I say, well, I'm up at 5:30 with the dogs and I meditate with my wife at 6:30. And so if I don't ramp down, get to sleep, then just so I've become a morning person, which is
Yep.
ironic. Certainly didn't, not by temperament, but by necessity. But
Same.
it's been really nice just to say, yeah, I like the sort of FOMO, JOMO thing, fear of missing out, joy of missing out. I really like saying, yeah, if I choose to, well, I had a great time staying up to midnight over the weekend with my daughter on a summer evening watching a show that we both liked. And that was super fun. And it made me feel in college like I'd been up till midnight the next day. Just I was tired, but this was a Netflix hangover. Didn't
Yeah.
involve any alcoholic beverages, but it was the exception rather than the rule. And so I think it's just very good feeling when we show up for ourselves, however we need to. And again, it's a relief. And I guess it's poignant. Yeah, I envy people that can, I don't know, that look like well, that's another thing about fear of missing out, joy of missing out, is the folks that look like they have it all rarely do. It's actually easier for me to say, yeah, I take care of enough people. There's something going on with everybody. And my thing's just I need my rest in the evening, so I'm going to call it what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, what other great stuff do you have to share that we haven't gotten to yet?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I have a question for you. As like somebody who helps order the labs, and you've got your 6 labs, like how would you recommend that somebody pursue that if they're like the client that I had in California is like, no, my according
Mm-hmm.
to whoever they talk to, the state doesn't allow that, which I know is false. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think pursuing your own answers is key. So how would you tell somebody to do that?
Mm-hmm. Let's see, a couple of thoughts just jumped to mind. I'm having folks show up now with these 100 labs that Mark Hyman has made available.
Yep.
And so that's pretty mind blowing. Talk about an interesting situation where my scheduling team needs to know how much time has to be allocated for that, because the person will say, oh, here's 100 functional medicine labs. I'll go see a functional medicine doctor. And I just get my hair blown back. And that's got a
Yeah.
TSH, free T4, free T3. I don't know that it's got a reverse T3 and antibodies, though. So maybe that's a bad answer. Then I would say now there is a 99% plus likelihood that anyone in any state in the country can get their hands on this. Genova has a 6-part thyroid panel, so any healthcare practitioner, in the country who's got an account, but then you get into sort of working across state lines. Mostly, I would say there's just and then there's this whole domain of folks I've been talking to a lot, from the just all entirely lab driven approach, where they
Mm.
don't even talk about the signs and symptoms. There's so many different approaches now. They just do a series of labs, battery of labs, and say whatever you find you fix. You just go to the root causes and fix them. So where would people go for it? I don't want to give people bad information, but I just feel very certain that there's a way to get those labs.
Yeah.
Um, One other thing that's super interesting is that medical providers can work across state lines if they're licensed in the state where the patient is. And so if somebody's licensed in California and they're based in Washington, which would be a somewhat common issue here,
Yep.
they an online search is almost certainly, well, now the AI search tools are so powerful. I live here and I want a 6-part thyroid panel. And if I were a medical provider, or according to best practices in conventional and holistic medicine, how would I get my hands on a TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, thyroglobulin, and thyroperoxidase antibody? That's legit.
Yes.
And there's a high likelihood chat and some other AI engines would say, oh, here's some options. Then you'd have to double check them for authenticity. I don't know. I feel like I'm waffling because I'm not entirely sure. And this state thing, it's intimidating, right? Am I going to get in trouble for getting these labs done? I don't want to give people bad info, but I mean, basically there's an ethical imperative that that's just the right thing, that they be able to do so.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. There's more and more agency. And I can't remember which states. I know New York State is one. And I think there's 3, and they're mostly on the East Coast, where you can't do like Ulta labs where you can order your own labs. But I think you're right. You could probably work with like Dr. Mark Hyman's company or something. Though I know last I checked, Casey Means' company, you can't get the stuff in those 3 states. But where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I would say it's tricky and it's sticky, and it's kind of an example of, well, let's see. This might be super important, actually, that we're drilling down into this. I mean, one of the best things we do today, because as you know, you said you'd spend a lot of time with my podcast, because I know that people can go to the thought leader and work with them. I try to do more of what's under the hood, or what wouldn't you get to talk about otherwise. So one potentially unsatisfactory ending to this story is somebody settles for the not best solution.
Yeah.
So they find somebody who'll get the labs done, but they're not necessarily well trained, or they just get the labs and then they're going to wing it. And I think it's probably better to presume there is a way you can get it done. And actually, I'm thinking the highest likelihood is every one of these states is next to another state.
Yes.
I would do. I think that's what I would do. I think these state laws are probably really, really hard to deal with in a meaningful fashion right now. And if you're in one of these 3 states, you probably need to do a search of somebody across state lines, because the Genova 6-part thyroid panel is $250 or $300 cash pay, maybe as low as $200, $189. And the majority of providers in the country now, let's see, I'm a functional medicine consultant that works for Fullscript. So full disclosure, I rarely have to make disclosures, but that's one. And Fullscript purchased Rupa.
I did not know that.
So now Rupa is part of Fullscript. So anyone with a Fullscript account can get a person a Genova 6-part thyroid panel for $200-$300. And so just anybody with a Fullscript account that's in proximity to anybody in any of these states, it's probably worth crossing state lines. And our policy is that we continue to do telemedicine with people once they've been seen once here in person. Now we have a higher risk tolerance than some others, because the prevailing idea is that you have to be licensed in both the state you're in and the state the patient's in. But our premise has been that that's unnecessarily restrictive of the patient, and there are Alaskan patients, if they've been seen here once, and I'll knock on wood here, but we've never had that challenged. And so it's possible, if you cross state lines to get the thyroid labs done, you wouldn't necessarily have to drive to see the person each time, or maybe you would, and it'd be worth it. It's not going to take that long it's worth it. It's an investment in the self. But yeah, I'm glad we took the time to go into that a little more fully.
Yeah. I feel like as we enable patients or people to dig into their own health and to take agency, we do come up with more questions. And they're not bad questions. We just have to figure them out. And I feel like us having this conversation is better than somebody having it with ChatGPT. Because chat can hallucinate.
Right. I tried to definitely sort of qualify that there, that if it seemed like it was on track, then you'd have to vet it. But I'm glad
Yeah.
to add again, because we're talking about AI and the fact that these things can hallucinate. It's a fraught domain with a really powerful search tool
Yeah.
that may or may not be right, and it could be radically wrong.
Yes. Yep. And I'll also say, if I'm using AI for medical stuff, and I will put labs in, I choose one of the AIs that tells you what site it searched. Because Chat GPT will not. Grok, I know, does. At the end of every answer, at the end of every paragraph, it gives you the little symbol so that you can go double check. Because I mean, AI is very helpful as a tool, but it's a tool that can go wrong.
This is such a great conversation. Institute for Functional Medicine added this to their annual international conference this year, no surprise. And they were talking about which search engines basically guarantee that the citations are not hallucinations.
Oh, nice.
And which ones don't.
Right.
And so now it's a whole milieu of different resources. So I do think that people can get their hands on ones where, the citation itself didn't just come out of the mists of hallucination.
Yes, for sure.
Well, we've talked about root causes. We've talked about stress and autoimmunity. Any other biggies you want to share, things you'd really love for people to know, just that they might not get a chance to hear otherwise?
I feel like, they're listening to your podcast, so they have a lot of background, which I appreciate. So nothing comes to mind as something they might not know that we haven't already covered.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe the role of vitamin D. I do always encourage that if somebody is going to order labs, and if they're doing their own labs, like tack on a vitamin D, because it is one of the triggers for Hashimoto's is a low vitamin D. And, I live north of Chicago. You live north of Chicago. Anybody who lives north of Chicago, we could be outside naked all sunlight long after the fall solstice, and we wouldn't make enough vitamin D from sun exposure. But I've talked to people who live in Florida, and they say, people down there, they have so much sun and they still have low vitamin D. So that is one thing I feel like people need to know before they order their labs, so that they can get that tacked on. Because if they get their labs and then they go through, my program, which talks about the different root causes, and the vitamin D is one that you have to test, you can't guess, then they're like, oh, I should have known that before I did the labs.
Brilliant. Yeah, as we close, let's talk a little bit about what it would feel like to work with you. So let's say somebody chooses to work with you. I think it helps our audience to know sort of what's the process.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, healthcare practitioners, we are limited by license. So I took my one-on-one work with people and I turned it into a self-paced program so that I can offer it to people in all the 50 states and around the world, where I don't have to worry about my license. So if you do it like as I recommend, it's 4 weeks, and you go through what are my root causes, figuring them out with common sense. And then also I help you know which tests to do and then how to address them. So there's 1 week and we focus on the gut and we focus on diet. I ask the people in the program to do a 72-hour food journal just to write down what they're eating and how that makes them feel. If they want to do it longer, I say between 3 and 5 days is ideal, at least for my program. But really helping women and men know what is going on in my health. Yes, it's good to know generalities. It's good to know about Hashimoto's in the full population, but we really need to know what's going on with you and what is going to work for you. So that is what I have put together in my program is, what are the root causes and then how to address those. And we're not going to address every single root cause in week 1 because that's too overwhelming. We have to keep it simple. My goal is to not overwhelm anybody.
And you have a podcast also, right? So people can check out your podcast and go into these deeper explorations.
Yep, the
Yeah.
Health with Hashimoto's podcast. And I've got over, I don't know, 160 episodes. So most questions can be answered
Mm-hmm.
in like listening to a quick podcast episode.
Fantastic. And so, and then how, so that's your podcast. And how do people find you otherwise?
Well, the easiest way is, I mean, you're already listening to a podcast. So search Health with Hashimoto's in the podcast player. And then I've got all my links in all my show notes. But I'm also healthwithhashimotos.com. And
Super.
everything's over there. Yep.
What a blast talking to you today. So great. Really.
It's been really good. Thank you. Because it's so good to talk to a doctor who's open to looking at the holistic and who's been trained in functional medicine and who helps patients advocate for themselves. It's been great.
Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, I would say it hasn't been easy. It's sort of cognitive dissonance thing for me as well. It might sound cheesy, but I think it was just that I went and looked at it the other day, the Hippocratic Oath, the commitment to serve. And it's really old timey. It's very strange. It's super old language. But I remember actually telling someone back around 2006, I just said, well, I feel compelled by that Hippocratic Oath I took graduating from medical school. If this is where the answers are, this is going to be really inconvenient.
Yes.
But it really, really matters. And then I would
Yes.
say the joy is, gosh, when I saw the autoimmune case that changed my life, that the naturopathic doctor who became my mentor, the changes she created for that person who'd failed 3 drugs. And I just thought, I gotta have my hands on this toolkit. It'd be like
Yeah.
a, car junkie seeing a muscle car, or, a bike racer seeing, carbon bike. And so I think you and I both have the joy of getting to use this incredible toolkit. So, wow.
Yes.
Well, have
absolutely.
a great day in your busy Minnesotan end of summer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rob.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.